NTRC celebrating its 10th anniversary, and we have three of the directors with us this morning. Glad to have them. Next to me is my namesake, Vincent Roberts, and the distinguished attorney, Brother Roberts Ferguson. I used to beat him up in table tennis.
Once upon a time. Once upon a time.
He runs the beat ever so often these days. He looks a good athlete still. And Brother Ferguson, nice to see you too, Alvin.
But as the coordinator of NTRC.
As the coordinator of NTRC. Good. Well, you could start because 10 years have gone by very quickly.
Yes, it's just like we just started.
That's correct.
Yes.
I like the shirt though. Is that the symbol of the institution?
Yes, it is.
Good.
We came into the market, or we came into existence as a result of the treaty that was established by the 5 member states 10 years ago, establishing ECTEL. And as pursuant to that, the NTRC was formed to collaborate with ECTEL and to regularize the telecoms market. So our main task is to regulate the telecoms market in the interest to provide affordable and quality service to customers. So today we could measure our achievement by looking at what is available. How well is the service established as compared with 10 years ago? We have seen growth. We have seen the introduction of mobile from about 10,000 customers, and now we're as high as 115% in penetration. That's a marked improvement in the telecoms industry. That is something we must celebrate. The service is now available to customers at a affordable and reasonable price, and also at a high quality. So today, because of the competition that has been introduced in the market, you will realize there is more than one providers in the market. In a competitive environment, we hope to achieve the best prices. That is based on supply and demand, and we are seeing the effects of it today.
Before I go to the two gentlemen, was it a rough ride to get there? Because you had a monopoly and you had to, I suppose, break through that monopoly and then...
I would like to say yes, looking at the records that exist. None of us was sitting here 10 years ago, but I have read the scripts of my colleagues prior to me, and it was a difficult task. The first task was to negotiating with Cable and Wireless, because they were the monopoly at that time, and the member states had a rough ride in carrying the message to convince them that this is the better way to go. And Vincent may be able to say more than that on that topic, but I think this was the rough ride as far as I am informed.
Vincent, you want to just explain it quick?
Well, thanks, Ray, and good morning to your viewers. Now, in the build-up to 2000, there's a very interesting thing happening globally with the liberalization of telecoms. And there was a gentleman from St. Vincent, Donny De Freitas, who was a sort of an activist for the public. And they prodded and pushed, and the various leaders at the time, it was now Senator Gregory Bowen, and other ministers from the region, but looking at Grenada, they were determined that the market should be liberalized. And it was a struggle to educate the people and to get the buy-in, because all along the way there were consultations, and very often it was only the immediate players who commented, but later on the people bought into it. Now the National Telecoms Act of 2000 was established, and this is what is the basis for the establishment of the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, of which Ruggles and myself are commissioners. Now the NTRC had to supervise the liberalization and to make sure, for example, that when a new player entered the market, and for example Digicel, that they were able to interconnect with Cable and Wireless, and that it was done in an equitable way, a fair way. Now, we saw that this resulted in, massive competition, and as Mr. Ferguson said, resulted in the quality service of new entrants, lower price, and all that. However, the NTRC's mission goes beyond that. For example, the licensing of media who has to use the spectrum, the radio stations and so on. We do not deal with the content and this sort of thing, but the spectrum that they use for broadcasting to make sure that one station does not drown out the other one, or that you're licensed to broadcast on one spectrum but you on three, and you're so powerful that you drowned out the neighboring stations. We regulate or monitor with the .gd domain, that's the country code for Grenada. So people who are using the internet and have a website can use .gd. All of these things are done by the NTRC, in addition to the universal service, which is also being launched on the 29th.
Mr. Ferguson, I suppose the legal basis on which this is being constructed, I would assume if people who are wrong, it ought to be solid. I'm just assuming.
There is a legal structure for the NTRC, as indicated earlier. Apart from the Telecommunications Act of 2000, you also had the ECTEL Treaty that really brought ECTEL as the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority into being. And so Grenada is part of 5 countries that form ECTEL. So it was really at the beginning a united approach to dealing with the liberalization of the telecommunications industry. And at that time too, from a legal standpoint, there were several legal challenges. So the monopoly has existed then. What we have seen in the past 10 years is the rapid expansion of the communication services. In fact, now we no longer just speak of the Telecommunications Act, though it's still in place. Right now, there is a new act that will come into force after extensive consultation, but the draft is already in place. That's the Electronic Communications Bill, soon to become the Electronic Communications Act, which takes into account the conversions on the market. We now speak of not just telecommunications, but information and communications technology, ICT. As you would note from the theme, recognizing and celebrating achievements, 10 years of continuous growth in the ICT sector. Right now, with the just phenomenal growth and expansion of new technologies, it is not only important as a means of communication, but we speaking now of the tremendous economic benefits that can accrue. And from the legal standpoint also, we are way behind in terms of our laws compared with the advances in technology. And Grenada is part of the family of the ITU, that's the International Telecommunications Union. And right now, we have participated in a project referred to as the HITCA project to introduce harmonized legislation in the region so that we can ensure that the law keeps abreast of technology. And in the last few months, in fact within the last year, culminating sometime last month, there are draft pieces of legislation for 6 areas that take into account the advances in technology. So we have draft legislation to deal with cybercrime, to deal with freedom of information, to deal with interception of communications, electronic transactions, electronic evidence, privacy and data protection. and those pieces of legislation will be soon made available in the respective countries for public consultation.